It's 193 AD today. The Roman Empire is about to go through the most embarrassing disaster in its history. It used to rule 3 continents and have armies that destroyed Carthage, enslaved Gaul, and burned down Jerusalem. Not by an army of barbarians, not by famine or plague, but by the people who protect it. There is a gold-lined hall in the Imperial house where Emperor Publius Helvius Pertinax is killed on March 28th. His blood is still warm on the marble floors. What was his crime? Trying to punish the men who swore to protect him. Who killed him? The Praetorian Guard was Rome's best army. They were the emperor's personal guardians and held power in their hands. But this isn't just a simple murder. This is a much worse thing. Because the Praetorians did not put up a dummy after killing Pertinax. They didn't crown a general. They didn't even act like they were following custom. The empire was put up for sale. People didn't want to rule the empire. Know what Rome had become before you can understand the chaos of 193 AD. Philosopher kings and warrior statesmen were no longer in charge of the kingdom. Wolves fought over a dead body that was starting to rot. The 5 good emperors era, which included Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius, came to an end decades before with the cruel rule of Commodus, a crazy ruler who fought as a gladiator and thought he was Hercules reborn. Commodus was finally killed by being choked in his bath on New Year's Eve, 192 AD. The Senate moved quickly to get rid of him. They made Pertinax a higher official. He was a respected senator, a former general, and a man of honor and order. He was 66 years old. He had worked for Rome his whole life. He thought he could make things right again. He lived for 87 days. It was easy for Pertinax to make a deadly mistake. He tried to change the Praetorian Guard. These soldiers were not like other troops. They made the kings. The Praetorians were bribed, overpaid, and completely dishonest. They had tasted royal blood before, and they liked it. They decided he had to die when Pertinax threatened to take away their bonuses and make the troops follow strict rules. A group of Praetorians attacked the castle that spring afternoon. Pertinax, who was old but not scared, went up to them. From old records, we know that he tried to talk sense into the men by reminding them of their vows and respect. In response, one man stuck a spear through his chest. Some people cut at his body with knives. His head was cut off and carried through the streets on a spike as a disgusting sign of their power. The Emperor of Rome, who was meant to be in charge of the whole world, had been killed like an animal. The gateways to greed. What happened next is hard to believe. The Praetorian Guard marched to their fortress, the Castra Praetoria, while Pertinax's blood was still pooling in the palace halls. They then made a statement that would echo through history like a scream. The Roman Empire is for sale. Who is going to pay? They climbed up the walls of their camp and yelled the offer down to the city below. Rome, the ageless and unbeatable Rome, had been turned into goods. The throne of Augustus, the seat of Julius Caesar, and the crown that led 50 million people in Europe, Africa, and Asia were now things that could be bought and sold like slaves or food. There were 2 bids coming out of the chaos. The first was Titus Flavius Sulpicianus, who was married to the man who killed Pertinax. Either out of sadness, anger, or ambition, or maybe all 3, he went into the Praetorian camp and started to talk things over. Historians of the past say he offered a huge 20,000 sesterces per man. Sulpicianus had a rival, though. Marcus Didius Julianus was a rich senator who didn't have any war experience, no political vision, and no shame. He was standing outside the walls of the fortress. Upon hearing that the sale had begun, he sped to the site and began shouting bids over the walls like a person at a livestock market. It was great for the Praetorians. They went back and forth between the two bids, making them compete with each other to raise the price. The Sulpicianus deal was better. Julianus replied. The soldiers made fun of, laughed at, and sucked every last coin out of Rome's desperate leaders. Marcus Didius Julianus was sitting on the throne of Rome by himself. He was dressed in imperial purple and had soldiers crown him. He bought the empire for a whopping 25,000 sesterces per Praetorian Guard, or 200 million sesterces altogether. It was a huge sum of money that would bankrupt the government and make his name famous forever. But you can't buy friendship with money, and there's no way it can buy credibility. The people of Rome turned against him just hours after he was crowned. They screamed threats and threw rocks at the palace gates as they crowded the streets. They chanted the name of the dead ruler Pertinax and called Julianus a thief, a coward, and an embarrassment. It was now whispers of treason in every hallway from the Senate, those spineless aristocrats who had watched the sale in silence. Julianus tried to be in charge. He tried to make rules, hold games, and win over the mob. Rome had already given up, though, because 3 armies outside the city walls, in the faraway provinces where real soldiers fought for the empire, knew what the Praetorians had done. They then made war. The wolves come down. Pescennius Niger, who was governor of Syria and in charge of the eastern troops, was the first to move. He was furious because he had spent decades fighting Rome's enemies, and now the city was being sold like a brothel. His soldiers made him emperor, and he started his way west. The second was Claudius Albinus, who was governor of Britannia and in charge of the fierce troops that were stationed at the edge of the world. His men praised him as Augustus, and he got ready to cross the English Channel, ready to kill everybody in Rome if that was what it took. Lucius Septimius Severus, governor of Pannonia and leader of the Danubian legions, was the most dangerous of all. His men were the toughest and most violent in the empire. Severus was born in North Africa and was a cruel politician who knew that birthright or Senate support were no longer enough to win Rome. It was taken by force. Severus moved very quickly, which scared people. He led his armies to Italy by force, going over impossible distances. His troops were driven by anger and the promise of revenge. He told the Senate, the Praetorians, and Julianus himself ahead of time, "I am coming. Give up the people who killed Pertinax, or I will burn Rome to the ground." The ruler who sought. Julianus began to fall apart inside the house. He didn't have an army. The Praetorians who sold him the throne were now avoiding him. They were keeping their silver and polishing their swords for the next person who came along. The Senate didn't do what he said. In the boards, people made fun of him. Julianus tried everything he could think of. He sent killers to kill Severus, but either failed or turned against him. The Praetorians laughed at him when he told them to make the city stronger. For some divine help that would save him, he even tried to do strange rituals and talk to magicians and soothsayers. It didn't work. Severus and his armies were at the walls of Rome by the end of May. People in the city held their breath. The Praetorians, the kingmakers who killed Pertinax and sold the empire at auction, were now up against real troops. These were men who had fought Dacians, Germans, and Sarmatians, and their loyalty was to their general, not to gold. The Praetorians fell apart. The Senate made Julianus a public enemy on June 1st, 193 AD, just 66 days after he bought the throne. It was taken away from him, his rank, his power, and his security. The Praetorians left him completely when they saw which way the wind was blowing. Julianus was in the palace by himself. The rooms were empty, and the palace was filled with the ghosts of emperors who had died better. A soldier named Aquilius was sent to finish the job. He found the emperor hiding in a back room. Julianus is said to have begged for his life. He offered more cash. He asked to be sent away, for forgiveness, and for a hearing. Aquilius didn't say anything. He pulled out his sword and killed Julianus quickly. The auction ruler died the same way he lived, sad, helpless, and bought. What's coming? Septimius Severus didn't come to Rome to free people. He came to rule it. He got rid of the Praetorian Guard completely, sending them away in shame and putting his own faithful soldiers in their place. He went after the men who killed Pertinax and dragged them through the streets before putting them to death in public. But Severus didn't stop there. He got what the auction was trying to say. The kingdom was up for grabs to the person with the biggest army. To make sure his army was the best, he paid them the most and made sure they were loyal. He gave bonuses to troops and raised their pay, which helped him build a military dynasty that would rule Rome for the next 100 years. The empire's flaws were shown during the year of the 5 emperors, 193 AD. Someone killed Pertinax. Julianus was bought and then thrown away. Soon, Severus would defeat Niger and Albinus in terrible civil fights that killed tens of thousands. The cocky Praetorian Guard, who thought they could sell Rome like cattle, learned one last thing. You can sell a kingdom at auction, but you can't change the buyer. The Praetorians sold Rome for silver. Septimius Severus bought it with steel. And the empire, eternal, invincible Rome, became a prize to be seized by whoever had the sharpest blade and the coldest heart. The auction of 193 AD wasn't a scandal, it was a prophecy. The Roman Empire would spend the next century tearing itself apart, emperor after emperor rising and falling, until the throne itself became a death sentence. History remembers the auction, but it was the blood that followed that truly mattered.